So Miranda rights are the rights given to people in the United States upon arrest. Anyone who has watched a U.S. detective show can rattle off the words, you have the right to remain silent, anything you say can and will be used against you in the court of law. This speech must be recited by law enforcement officials when detaining suspects to ensure they are aware of their right to an attorney and against self-incrimination. These rights are also called the Miranda warning, and they stem from the 1966 Supreme Court case, Miranda versus Arizona. In the 1966 case, Miranda versus Arizona, the Supreme Court ruled that the detained criminal suspects, prior to police questioning, they must be informed of their constitutional right to an attorney and against self-incrimination. The case began with the 1963 arrest of Phoenix resident Ernesto Miranda, who was charged with rape, kidnapping, and robbery. Miranda was not informed of his rights prior to the police interrogation. During the 2-hour interrogation, Miranda allegedly confessed to committing the crimes which the police apparently recorded. Miranda, who had not finished 9th grade and had a history of mental instability, had no counsel present. At the trial, the prosecution's case consisted solely of his confession. Miranda was convicted of both rape and kidnapping and sentenced to 20 to 30 years in prison. He appealed to the Arizona Supreme Court, claiming that the police had unconstitutionally obtained his confession. The court disagreed, however, and upheld the conviction. Miranda appealed to the U.S. Supreme Court, which the case was reviewed back in 1966. The Supreme Court, in a 5-4 decision written by Chief Earl Warren, ruled that the prosecutions could not introduce Miranda's confession as evidence in a criminal trial because the police had failed to first inform Miranda of his right to an attorney and against self-incrimination. The police's duty to give these warnings is compelled by the Constitution's Fifth Amendment, which gives a criminal suspect the right to refuse to be a witness against himself, and the Sixth Amendment, which guarantees criminal defendants the right to an attorney. The court maintained the defendant's right against self-incrimination has been a long part of the law, which means to equalize the vulnerability inherent to detained. Such a position unchecked can often lead to government abuse. For example, the court cited that the continued high incident of police violence designed to compel confessions from a suspect. These and other forms of intimidation maintained by the court deprive criminal suspects of their basic liberties and can lead to false confessions. The defendant's right to an attorney is an equally fundamental right because the presence of an attorney in interrogations, according to Warren, enables the defendant, otherwise compelling circumstances, to tell his or her story without fear. Without these two fundamental rights, both of which court dispelled and no statement obtained can give productive choice. Thus, to protect the rights in the face of widespread ignorance of the law, the court devised statements that the police are required to tell the defendant who has been detained and interrogated. These mandatory Miranda rights begin with the right to remain silent and the continued statement that anything that you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. The police are further compelled to inform the suspect of his or her right to an attorney, a defendant's attorney who can accompany him during interrogations. Because none of these rights at the time were afforded to Ernesto Miranda, and his confession was thus unconstitutionally admitted at trial, his conviction was reversed. Miranda was later retried and convicted without the admission of confession. Many critics back then during the Miranda decision argued that the court, in seeking the right to protect the rights of individuals, had seriously weakened law enforcement. Later decisions by the Supreme Court limited some of the potential scope of the Miranda safeguards. Later in 2000, the Supreme Court decided on another case, Dickerson versus the United States. That case was back then, and it presented a more conservative court under the Chief Justice and an opportunity to overrule the Miranda versus Arizona case. With only 2 dissenters, the majority concluded that the doctrinal of the Miranda decision had not been undermined. Writing for the Supreme Court, the Chief Justice of the Miranda decision that it had become embedded routine police practice to the point where the warnings have become part of our national culture. The Supreme Court declined to overrule the Miranda decision in that case. Miranda versus Arizona, that created the Miranda rights, many of the times we take it for granted today, but it reconciled the increasing police powers of the state with the basic rights of individuals. Miranda right remains good today.